Hello, everyone. Just give me a moment to resume my sharing. Okay. So I think we have a pretty comfortable group of student teachers here. So later during Q&A, please feel free to ask me any and all questions that you may have, right, about my sharing or what I do at AppMaker. But maybe let me just dive straight into it. You're here to hear about demystifying AI for primary school students, and let's just jump into it. I hope everyone can see my screen. Yeah, all right.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Dr. Chua has already introduced me very briefly. I just mentioned that I was teaching in primary and secondary schools, but eventually I also recognize that there are many ways to serve and to contribute to the education sector. So right now I'm doing so from the outside, from the private sector. But it's my conviction that actually there's a lot that the private sector can learn from teachers in public and public schools, and teachers in public schools can also learn a lot from the private sector. So I'm all for these kind of open sharings where we share a little bit of what we do, and then we get inputs from teachers on, this works, this doesn't work. So this is one example of a program that we have actually carried out in primary schools, which has worked in a couple of schools. On the side, for me, like I said, I've taught in primary and secondary schools, involved a bit in higher education policy. I've also done this social enterprise first grade study. It's a small tutoring center catering to low-income students. So happy to share more about that later also. And about AppMaker, right? I think before I jump into the project itself that I'll be sharing, I think I want to give a bird's eye view of what AppMaker does, right? AppMaker operates at the intersection of maker education and edtech, right? So what that means is that we use principles of maker education and maker-centric education to drive adoption in educational technology so that students become not just consumers of technology, but creators using technology. And this AI project that we're sharing on is a great example of how we've managed to make that happen. Okay, founded in 2016, we've only been around for a few years. We have headquarters in Singapore, small offices in India and the US. But despite a small footprint, quite proud that we've been able to impact over 500,000 students through partnering with big corporates such as Intel and SoftBank, as well as Meta. Okay, a lot of our consultancy focus is on teacher PD. We also do a lot of content creation, as well as student workshops and consulting for makerspaces and innovation labs. So for this project, I think the main context was that there was a huge demand from schools' infocom clubs for CCA programs, right? And I think for those of you who have already had the opportunity to be in school, you will understand that for many CCA programs, they're not actually carried out by the teachers themselves, right? The teachers might not be the subject matter experts. What they do is they get qualified vendors to come in and to train students on certain competencies, right? And one of these competencies was AI, right? Teachers from infocom clubs were looking, they did an external scan to see what are the skills that students may need in the future. One of that is AI, familiarity with AI. And they got AppMaker in to develop a program to facilitate the understanding and the acquisition of foundational knowledge behind artificial intelligence. So right off the bat, I think a lot of colleagues and people I've talked to are like, hey, you can introduce AI to primary school students, man. Aren't they too young, right? So I think that's also one of the concerns that we had. But as we went along, we realized it's possible to devise a program that pitches to their level of understanding, right? And over the next few slides, I'll go into some detail as to how we managed to do that. We designed 9 sessions. Each session is around 2 hours. That's the duration of a CCA period. And in each session, we actually engage them, get them to think about how to use AI, and as well as teach them about using AI through this framework called the AI project cycle. The AI project cycle is not something that AppMaker came up with. It's widely accepted in industry as the steps needed to undergo an AI project. All right. So what we did is we pare it down to the primary school level. Okay. I'm going to talk about a few things here. I'm going to focus on a few things. The first is introduction to AI games, right? Specifically computer vision games. What is the role of these games? How do they help students understanding of AI? And why do you look at computer vision specifically? The next is about the AI project cycle, right? I mentioned that we use the AI project cycle to frame the whole series of sessions. But what is the AI project cycle, and what kind of examples can I give to actually help you understand what this AI project cycle looks like? Last but not least, some sharing about the student projects that the students came up with, right? After understanding AI and looking at the affordances as well as the applications of AI within their local context, okay? Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is computer vision, right? So I think take a step back. For AI, there are different I guess AI use types or use NLP, right? Natural language processing, NLP, which is a way of, which is one use case for AI. Another big use case for AI is computer vision, right? And computer vision basically looks at computers being able to recognize objects based on semantic categories. If I train an AI model to recognize a calculator, right? I can give it images of calculators. Some look like this, some look like your TI-84, some look like your old school giant calculator with buttons the size of, I don't know, my finger, right? And you'll be able to recognize all of that as calculators. Okay, but a well-trained model, if I give it, say, put a handphone beside a calculator, it will recognize a handphone as not a calculator. So CV is a lot about recognition, okay, visual recognition. And why we look at CV is because developmental appropriateness, very easy for students to understand what computer vision is, because it's primarily, the impact is largely visual, okay? There are clear tech affordances behind CV that cater well to primary level students. We use this program called Machine Learning for Kids, as well as Scratch. Later, if there's a bit of time, I will show you what machine learning for kids look like. But basically, it's a website that allows you to train a machine learning model. You upload images, to train the model, and you can test the model by giving it other images. Okay. Later, if we have time, I will go back to look at that. And if there are questions regarding machine learning for kids, please ask later. Then maybe I will do a bit of a hands-on. Okay. But otherwise, you can go and explore that after this session. There is also a range of social impact use cases for computer vision that I will go through later that were quite interesting for the students to look at. The last one is CV versus NLP. Yeah, so NLP, natural language processing, right? It's about computers being able to use AI to understand human language and give and give outputs that are appropriate, right? So ChatGPT, which a lot of you may have already heard about, is an advanced example of NLP. Okay, but NLP, to understand it at the very first principles level, depends a lot on language ability. Primary school students are still grappling with that, right? So we opted to do something like computer vision, which is largely visual, rather than NLP, which is language mediated. The second thing I want to go through is, after we are sure that we want to use computer vision to introduce AI to students, then how do we do so, right? We have an animal guessing game. I'm going to briefly show you all how we use this animal guessing game to give students a sense of how AI works. Okay, so we get students to, guess an animal, and what happens is that the animal will slowly appear on the screen, right? So if I click this button, okay, then it will slowly appear. So you can see their pictures slowly appearing. And then at the point where I'm reasonably sure, maybe I click on this button. And then they'll say, what is it, right? I think it's a lion, so I click lion. And the answer is correct. It's a lion, right? Now we are using this to really show students. Yeah, I'll just keep it here. We're just using this to show students how AI works, right? So AI responds to an image like that. It requires data, okay? In the animal guessing game, the individual pixels are appearing bit by bit. That is the data. It identifies image features, okay? As a parallel within the animal guessing game, I only click on the button after I see, for example, the lion's mane or the eyes of the lion. Those are features of the image, right? And those features of the image make me even more certain that that's a lion, right? And similarly, an AI needs to identify the features of images in order to guess correctly. The last one is AI predicts and classifies. Okay, so similar to how in the animal guessing game, after I look at the mane and the eyes, I relate it to other animals, right? What other animals has a mane as well as eyes? Or a lion, tiger? Okay, it should be a lion. Okay, that is the process that my brain takes to actually predict and classify, and that's similar to how AI works. So this animal guessing game is used as a way to introduce students to how AI may work, while not bogging them too much in the technical details, correct? Yeah. And what we realized also is important to debrief and ask students how they managed to guess the animals correctly, why it took them so long to guess certain animals, etc. So this actually, especially for students who are more sophisticated, they may be able to say, oh, it took so long for me to guess certain animals because other animals also got a pair of eyes and a mane one, right? So I needed to find out more image features before I was able to guess the animal correctly. And that's also how AI works, right? The more complex an image is and the more confusing an image is, the more features it will need to know in order to guess correctly. Okay. So that's games like this can actually lead to a pretty deep understanding of AI. There are also computer vision games that work like magic, right? So I've given a few over here: Jojo Cam, Quick Draw, Emoji Scavenger Hunts, and I'll let you know how you can actually get access to this later on, right? But these are basically free online experiments with Google. Okay, for example, Quick Draw. Can you guys have a quick thumbs up? How many of y'all heard of Quick Draw? Quick Draw. You just give me a thumbs up on the Google. Oh, no one. No one. Okay. Quick Draw is basically I guess yeah, I guess we don't have that much. We have a bit of time. Sorry. Let me just quickly go through Quick Draw. Quick Draw with Google. It's super simple, right? You say you click on Let's Draw, and then you draw a crab, right? Pardon in advance. Apologize in advance for my terrible. All right. So basically, give me a moment. Sorry. Give me 30 seconds. Um, Yeah, so basically Quick Draw is it's a very intuitive AI activity. It gets you to draw. The Google's AI model, who is trained on other people's drawing, will actually try to guess what you're drawing, right? And of course, the better you are at drawing, the faster you'll be able to guess accurately. So this is a game that's powered by AI that's actually super fun for students, right? But beyond getting them to kind of mess around and tinker with the game, it's important to ask them, how does it work, right? It's not just enough to get them to play around the game, otherwise it looks like magic, right? But get them to think about what's under the hood. How does it work, right? Under what circumstances does the system not work and why, right? Can you challenge the system to draw a crab that's very artistic, like abstract art? And then you can insist, oh, it's a crab, but the system is unable to guess. And why does that happen in the case? Okay. Stress testing the game in this way is actually a deep way of understanding how AI works and under the circumstances that it might not work so well. All right. So the other games over here also use different AI models, and you can go and try around with them and play it with your students next time when you're going to schools. All right. So after we introduce these games and to really hook them and pick their curiosity, then we introduce students to the AI project cycle. There are different stages in the AI project cycle, right? I'm not going to belabor the point, and I think the different stages are best illustrated through an example. Okay, but we have 5 stages: define your problem, plan a solution, collecting data, train your model, and last but not least, develop your AI application. Instead of telling you at a very high level what these are, I'm going to concretize our understanding by giving you an example. And this is an example that we actually give the students. So this is an example that we feed them. Okay, we spoon feed this example to them as a way of helping them understand what the AI project cycle looks like. Stage one, define your problem, right? So I mean, the previous few years during COVID, we recognized that wearing face masks is important. As a teacher, you are concerned with students who do not wear their masks in your school, which may cause risk to the people around them. Okay, so this is the problem. The problem is that students don't wear masks, even though it's compulsory to be masked up. And bear in mind, this is like a couple years ago, so it was compulsory to get masked up. So with the problem, we plan out a solution at a very high level. Okay, you have to think about what categories do you want your AI model to classify. So for example, in this model, does anyone have any idea or want to type out like what categories, right? There are two categories that you want the AI model to classify. What are the two categories? Can feel free to just type out. Given the problem set is, the problem question is this, your concern is students who don't wear their mask. What categories do you want your AI model to classify? You can type in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and talk. Anyone? Let me see. Eddie, what do you think, Eddie? What are the two categories? Maybe Eddie isn't at his laptop. How about Ching Ching?
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question was, what categories do you think you want your AI? Given that the challenge is, the question is that you're concerned with students who don't wear their masks in school, right? So what are the two categories that you may want your AI model to classify? So if you want to, let's say the solution is to create a face mask identifier, right? What are the two categories that you want your AI model to classify? The two groups.
Categories that I want my AI model to classify: mask wearers and non-mask wearers.
Bingo, yes, correct. Yeah, mask wearers versus non-mask wearers, correct? So your AI model needs to classify people into two categories: mask wearers versus non-mask wearers. Thanks much, Ching Ching. And then from there on, you figure out what data you need for the solution. All right. In this case, it's images of people with their mask on and mask off, right? And then you got to think about how you collect the data. Okay. How you collect the data. Do you want to take photos of people? Do you want to go online to download images of people who are masked up versus masked off, so on and so forth, right? So this is a very high level solution. Then you collect your data. Okay, before training a model, you have to collect the data, right? Because your machine learning model has to be trained on data. Okay, so for this one, you collect images of masked persons and you collect images of unmasked people. Okay, so you go online, you download, or you take photos amongst your friends, right? With their mask on, 50 photos of people with their mask on, taken from different perspectives, angle left, angle right, angle center, taken with their masks, with different types of masks, surgical masks versus N95 masks, and that along with a separate group of unmasked persons, right? People with their mask off. Okay, so now you got your two groups, and then you load all these images into this ML for Kids web app. Maybe it's an opportune time for me to actually just share this ML for Kids. Okay, so basically you have to log in. Hope I can remember my actually, you can try without registering. Plus, add a new project. Recognizing images, you want to train it to recognize images, right? And then I'll click on create. Okay, you want to train the model first. So you want to train a model, mask on. All right, and you want to add another label called mask off. So over here, you will put in a lot of photos about people with their mask on. And over here, you will put a lot of photos of people with their mask off. Right? And thereafter, you'll be able to train the model to recognize images that you give it as people with their mask on or mask off. Okay? So in a very at a very high level, without going into too much detail, that's how the machine learning model is trained. Okay, and you can see the interface for ML for kids is very, I guess it's simplistic, but it's simplistic in a way that's good for primary school kids, right? Easy to understand. After that, after you train your model, right? You train your model in ML for kids, right? The model will give you a confidence percentage, which is how confident it is at detecting people with their mask on versus mask off. And generally, anything above 90% is good. Sometimes you may need to improve the model even further. For example, some of your training photos have a lot of background images, background interference. Instead of me wearing a mask, there's a lot of people behind also wearing the mask. So the machine is the AI model is unable to identify my face and my mask amidst the background noise. Okay, so you have to upload photos that more accurately represent someone who's wearing a mask. Okay, and after you train your model, you can actually build your model in Scratch. Right, and I don't have time to go into detail what that looks like, but basically after you have a model, you can load the model in Scratch and the students can do a bit of block programming to develop a very quick AI application. Okay. This is a very simple example of how we operationalize our AI model in Scratch. Right, we created a model where you can detect someone without their mask. When someone without a mask, it will prompt the user and say wear your mask. Conversely, if the model detects that someone is already wearing a mask, they will prompt the user with a prompt, well done. Okay. So that was the app that we developed based on this AI project cycle. And this was the example that we got the students to do. All right. We basically feed them the information, all the information they need in order to do this project cycle. So it's a bit of like a I do, we do, you do kind of thing, right? This is like we do together. We're feeding them all the knowledge. And then after that is you do, right? So now that you are already familiar with the project cycle based on info that we feed y'all, now we want y'all to do it yourself, right? We want you to come up with your own project cycle based on your own solution, problem statement, okay? So this is where the scoping of student projects come about, right? We wanted them to take up problem statements that have to do with challenges they face in the community. So I think AI can be used for quite frivolous and fun purposes, like Quick Draw is a fun game, right? Just it's a good way to spend 5 minutes of your time. But I think there are so many other opportunities that you can use AI for them to actually help their community. So we wanted them to create a problem that's kind of linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. But you can use any other social impact framework. The Sustainable Development Goals was something that we have used before, so it was convenient for us to actually use it. For example, we look at how can AI encourage exercise. All right, that's under the Good Health and Well-being Sustainable Development Goal. How can AI help the deaf? How can AI encourage recycling? So all these are different ways of using AI for social impact that we wanted them to think about. Okay. The other thing that we wanted them to consider was looking at AI ethics. Right? I think in this whole ChatGPT onslaught and awareness has made us realize that AI ethics is something that affects every one of us, right? So, for example, we will tell the students or get them to think about, how is your project used in an ethical way? How is your project actually not abusing other people's privacy? Where are you getting your photos from, for example, to train a model, right? Are these photos respectful to the people in the photos, right? It's questions like that they need to consider. And we also give them plenty of examples because sometimes the problems that they come up with might not be easily addressed using AI. Sometimes the problems they come up with are the solution is too far away or solution is too complex or too sophisticated for them to actually tackle at their level. So I think that's the role of the facilitator, the teacher, right? To talk to them and say that, how can we work together to scope the project together? Now we know you're passionate in this thing. What's a project of sufficient scope which will actually allow you to create an impact in that domain, right? Without being overly burdensome that you may need more than a few lessons to create it, right? So although, I mean, yeah, that's the role of the facilitator lah. The last thing I want to do before, going into sharing about Q&A, but also sharing about something else we've done that's related, right? It's talking about these student projects. I want to give you all an example of this. Maybe I just pop this on my screen. All right. So this is one example, right? The problem statement was, we found that a lot of people, and this is verbatim, so you'll find a lot of grammatical errors, but yeah, that's how you know it's genuine. We found that a lot of people have bad posture while sitting in the office. For example, workers doing computer work while sitting, and children sitting while focusing in class. So they wanted to create an app that combats bad posture, right? That's able to detect if anyone has bad posture or not. And if you recall this screenshot over here, it's from Machine Learning for Kids. What this group did was to upload images of bad posture, right? Pictures of the internet, pictures from the internet, as well as pictures of them or their friends actually sitting in a bad posture. Okay? Conversely, they wanted to give examples of people sitting in a good posture. So likewise, photos on the internet, as well as photos of themselves and their classmates. Then they train the model on these two, right? Bad posture and good posture. And as a result, the model is able to detect people with good versus bad posture. Okay. All right, so this is one example. Other examples, some students created models that detect whether you're touching your face or not, all right, to guard against disease. This model in the center detects which recycling bin the trash should go in, whether it's glass or plastic or paper. All right, and the last one detects emotional expression, right, to help special needs students identify different emotions, right? So I think these are interesting use cases where students actually leverage on AI, right, to create projects with a definite social impact focus. Okay. Okay, and I think before I open up our Q&A, I think that you all may have questions about let's say I want to find out more about these things, right? Where can I download resources? We have recently launched a web, I guess it's a platform for professional development. And what we've done, we've uploaded a lot of our resources onto this platform. All of the resources are free to download. Okay, and all of the resources involve emerging technology. So by emerging technology, I talk about like AI, AR, VR, things like blockchain, simulation and modeling software. So the idea is that if teachers want to figure out how to bring in emerging technology in their classrooms, they can actually go onto the platform and download our lesson resources. And what I've done is I've uploaded a lesson that is used to introduce students to AI onto Eddy. And now I'm going to tell you how to access it so y'all can actually sign up and download it and look at it in your free time. Okay. So this is Eddy. Basically, all you need to do is go to eddyforteachers.com. Right. I'm also going to paste this in the chat window on Zoom so you can actually take a look at it. Eddyforteachers.com was just launched, early this week, late last week. But you can, after you log into your own account, this is what you'll see on the homepage. But you'll see that I've uploaded this lesson called Introduction to Artificial Intelligence. So we weren't intending on uploading this lesson initially, but I thought that, giving you all something to take away from that actually you all can go up there and take a closer look at the lesson plan that we've had. And basically this Introduction to Artificial Intelligence lesson is a 1-2 hours lesson that is used to introduce students to artificial intelligence, right? It includes things like the guess the animal game, right, that I mentioned before, along with the guess the animal cards as well as the slide deck, right? It includes an entire slide deck which actually can be introduce them to artificial intelligence. Okay, so it's a full slide deck over here. And this is part of giving back to the teaching community. If you want to use it in your classrooms, feel free to use it, take it, remix it. Yeah, this is something that Amicus is giving back to the fraternity, right? Quick draw is here, for example. And we also have the questions that I asked you all, right? What do you think if we get an artist, what happens when you're drawing, what I mentioned just now about getting students to look at under the hood, look at how the app works and everything, all that's included within this set of slides, okay? So it's basically all the games, the AI games to introduce students to artificial intelligence. Okay, there's also a quiz that's included, okay? Activity 4 is a quiz, right? I've included a question bank in document format. Seems like it's blocked. Okay, let me go and figure this out. But bottom line is that we have this resources available for you. So if you want to sign up and download it and check out the rest of our platform as well, you might find something that's interesting to you. Okay. Let me go back to my. Yeah. So I'm gonna stop here. Just some ways to stay connected with Amica. You can join Eddie. Eddie is in beta right now, so it's our platform that I mentioned earlier. We're still in beta testing, so you have the chance to tell us what works, what doesn't work. What things you want to see, what kind of topics you want to see on the platform, what kind of subjects you want us to create lesson plans on that bring in emerging technology. Subscribe to our newsletter. All right, we have a Substack newsletter where we give fortnightly EdTech tips and tricks, and we give occasional updates on Eddie. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn and Facebook.